dance. I was like, we go through it. And it's like,
Anything else?
no.
You're back?
Now I got nothing.
You're not old enough, Christina.
Oh my gosh, yeah. No, you're not. Right. I was the other way. No, we reached the fall weather where you leave the house and it's. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, good to see you.
I want to do that camera. Are you saving a seat for somebody? Oh.
The other cards are 10 off.
I don't remember that. I remember. Oh, I see.
How are you, Nancy? Last time.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm sleepy.
I'll say number one.
And then Friday. Because I don't want to. I
Turn it on for me.
There you go.
Thank you.
No problem.
Hello, Mr. Rankin.
Hey, how you doing? Just making us some fun, that's all.
What's up?
What is this touching? I'm sorry.
Thank you everyone for joining us this evening for the SC161 Board of Education meeting. It is 6:02 and I'd like to officially call the meeting to order. Roll call please.
Nelson. Lister.
Here.
Braun. Here. Blackman. Here. Kraus.
Here.
Lindstrom. Here. Grace.
Here, the quorum is present. The first item on the agenda is audience comments, and there are no comments. So the next is above and beyond recognition.
So excited to bring you our first two nominees for the 2021-22 school year. And since we're here in person, they can join us. So no video this time. So first, our first nominee is She's received multiple nominations, so I get the pleasure of reading a couple of those, and then there's a parent in our audience that will read hers. So our first nominee is Mrs. Amy Wagner from Western Avenue. Parent. Mrs. Wagner shines inside and out of the classroom. She is an awesome, engaging, and positive teacher, and she is also an involved member of the HF community. It's awesome to have a teacher who is also invested in the school as a parent and community member. She made my son's third grade year amazing, even with all the challenges of COVID. She definitely goes above and beyond. And then from Brittany Ellis Dyson and other parents, Mrs. Wagner is always attentive and there when I need her. Every time I send her an email, she responds quickly. My son adapts to her well. She makes class interesting, and she's the reason my child loves going to school.
Aww.
And then we have Dr. Carlita Hughes, another parent here,
Aww.
to read her.
I'm going to stay away, but Ms. Wagner definitely deserves this. I'm here, being that my daughter's sick, but I had to be here to present those flowers. And I tested COVID negative, and I'm vaccinated, so please don't worry, I promise you. But I don't even know where to start. Ms. Wagner has been my daughter's teacher for 2 years now. Last year, and I don't want to tell her business too much, but she went through a lot. She is an athlete. She is a wife of a first responder. Her husband, I'm not sure if that's him, but he's a first responder. She's a mother of two who attends Western Avenue. She lost her father and didn't even miss school. She still walked on, which I was shocked about. That was impressive. And that was just last year during the pandemic. Now let's just talk about this year when I was heartbroken because my daughter was exposed to COVID. Thank God she was negative. But on the third day of class, and me being a pediatrician, I was very upset. You can imagine. But she sent love notes to my daughter, made her feel like she was at school. And I'm like, this is why I didn't want her to go to school. And my daughter wanted to go back to school. She made her feel like she was a part of the classroom. So I wrote the letter right away, and I just wanted to say thank you for everything from the bottom of my heart. It was very, I really appreciate it. So thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Then our second staff nominee is Mrs. Tamika Britton. Tamika was nominated by staff member Mrs. Nancy Laraga, so I'm going to have Nancy come up and read her nomination.
So I have had the honor and privilege of working with Tamika for a long time, but for 3 years at Conroe School. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share some of the wonderful things that Tamika does for the students and staff at Conroe School. Tamika does so many things that are above and beyond, and I'll only speak about a few of those things. First, she's involved in various school activities that benefit our students. She helps with Girls on the Run, our different community nights such as Family Reunion, our Veterans Day Assembly, which happens during the school day with the exception of this school year, and our Black History Month program. She gives countless hours creating and producing the Black History Month program. It's completely hers, 100%. I told her before, you could sell this. It attracts so many families and visitors that the production happens in the gym at Parker Junior High and becomes a standing room only event. Tamika also is a positive influence at our school, not only for our students, but for our staff. She's helped with the social committee for many years. This is a committee which plans events and outings for our staff. It's such an important committee for us all because so many of the people in our school are working in isolation now more than ever that the only time teachers and staff might see each other is at a weekly meeting or in the hallway during passing periods. These outings bring us together and they're so much needed at this time. This year alone, we had special school luncheons where we ordered lunches to staff. We had school outings at local establishments and fun events, such as a trip on a haunted highway. Tamika is also involved in leadership roles which benefit our school and our district. She's been a member of the BLT, the DLT, and the FBA. She's an open and honest person that you can trust. and she always strives for the needs of the students and staff. Thank you, Tamika, for all that you did to make Heather Hill the great school that it is. You are absolutely amazing, and I hope you know that.
Aww, yay.
Thank you, Tamika and Amy, for all of the lives that you touch, the work that you do for our students is, as you heard tonight, and it's not going unnoticed and not underappreciated. So I will be coming to get your picture to add you to our wonderful wall and have a small token of appreciation for you as well. So thank you again. Pictures. Yeah, right here.
Thank you. Thank you both for all that you do for the district. This is one of our favorite parts of this meeting. I can live behind. So thank you so much. Thank you, Eric, for above and beyond. Certainly appreciate your hard work. Okay, the next item on our agenda is superintendent's report.
Yes, and I have the next two, so I'll kind of pair them up together. But the nice weather was kind enough to stick around for a few more days into this week. It was really exciting. The Parker students could complete their walkathon today. I was able to catch the tail end of that. But the kids were smiling, the staff members were having fun, the parents were out there with their signs. It was just a really nice event in the community. Looking forward to joining the Heather Hill PTO virtually tomorrow for their monthly meeting. Our engaged PTO groups are really critical to our schools for all their hard work, all their support, and just all the time that they give for our students and staff members. This Friday and Saturday, the Parker students will be performing the play Sherlock Holmes in the First Baker Street Irregular. The play will be performed, recorded, and posted online for the community to review, but we're also excited to have some in-person participants as well. We are lucky enough to be able to have the parents and supporters of some of our sports teams come out in person. We thought it would be very important to be able to come out and support our students who are in the arts as well. So it's a small, slow return to in-person activities, but each participant will be given 2 tickets to have 2 family members or close friends in person. So we're excited about that. Finally, this Thursday we'll be celebrating Veterans Day. While there is no school, of course we're looking forward to meaningful conversations just about the ways that veterans have impacted our lives. And we'll just celebrate the number of people in our community. In the past, we've had some pretty wide open, deep, thoughtful presentations with a lot of community members. Obviously, those were pared back because of the pandemic, but the focus still remains the same. And we're looking forward to celebrating the service of our veterans this week. That's the end of my superintendent's report. But I do have the Learning and Instruction Committee update. Our last meeting was on October, I believe it was October 25th. The initial meeting we reviewed our sick schedule for the day before Halloween. We have 2 school improvement days in our calendar. One is was on October 29th, and the next one is coming up in March. We really focused on kind of the a la carte options that we had offered, but really had a good conversation about the role of culturally responsive teaching and leading standards and how those are going to make the focus to training into school improvement days, teacher institute days, staff meetings, etc. We also had an initial conversation on standard-based grading and how that might look in District 161. We know that will be a multi-year project. It'll really pick up steam probably in the 22-23 school year, but just as we're starting to put together the framework for that, we want to get the feedback from our board members on that committee. And finally, we spent most of our time discussing the review of our social studies materials. As you know, we are in the process of reviewing, identifying, hopefully recommending a new set of social studies materials, K-8, for the students in District 161. At this time, Ms. Crawford is working with teachers on the initial review of the materials. We'll follow that with a pilot. Certainly, opportunities for parents and community members to review the materials. And finally, a recommendation to the Board of Education for approval for implementation in the 22-23 school year. So we are meeting monthly. Our next meeting is coming up on November 22nd. I believe it'll be at 5 o'clock. So as we continue to meet with the committee, we'll continue to bring the updates to the board, primarily focused on the social studies adoption for the next 3 to 4 months. That's the committee report.
Thank you. Any questions?
You're welcome to stay, but thanks for
Oh,
coming.
yeah. Sorry. I should have
Congratulations.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. And a motion to approve the consent agenda, including personnel report 22-009, payroll for the month of October, minutes of the August 16th Board of Education meeting, and the FOIA request.
So,
Roll call, please.
Lanier,
Yes.
Rouse,
Yes.
Sharon.
Yes.
Blackman. Yes. Nelson.
Yes.
Leestra. Yes. Briggs.
Yes, and the motion passes. Okay, the next item on the agenda are the action items. The first one is bills for the month of November.
I reviewed the bills for the month of November. I have no questions. I'd like to make the motion and ask for a second to approve the bills for the month of November in the amount of $962,538.35.
Second. Roll call, please.
Rouse,
Yes.
Blackman.
Yes.
Sharon.
Yes.
Leestra. Yes. Lanier. Nelson.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes, and the motion passes. The next item is, okay, may I have a motion to snow removal bid? May I have a motion to approve the 3-year 2021-2023 snow removal bid from Stereo Landscaping? Second. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Blackman. Yes. Nelson.
Yes.
Leestra. Yes. Lanier.
Yes.
Sharon.
Yes.
Rouse.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes, and the motion passes. Okay, landscaping bill bid. May I have a motion to approve the bid from Integrity Landscaping for landscaping services for the 2022 year?
So moved.
Second. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Sharon.
Yes.
Leestra. Yes. Nelson.
Yes.
Rouse.
Yes.
Blackman. Yes. Lanier.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes, and the motion passes. Stericycle contract. May I have a motion to approve the contract? I missed two. Sorry. Getting ahead of myself. Train warranty. May I have a motion to approve the train warranty for the period of March 2021 to March 2022 for parts and labor?
So moved.
Second. Any questions? Roll call.
Nelson.
Yes.
Blackman. Yes. Leestra. Yes. Lanier.
Yes.
Sharon.
Yes.
Rouse.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes, the motion passes. Additional preschool classroom. May I have a motion to approve the hiring of one full-time preschool teacher and one full-time paraprofessional to support the needs of an additional preschool for all classes?
So moved.
Any questions?
Yes, question. So we do have a classroom for these students and the teachers, we should say, the teacher and the paraprofessional.
Yes.
Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Rouse.
Yes.
Sharon.
Yes.
Lanier.
Yes.
Blackman. Yes. Leestra. Yes. Nelson.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes, the motion passes. Stericycle contract. May I have a motion to approve the contract with Stericycle for hazardous waste containers?
Just one one brief piece on this. We weren't necessarily going to bring this to the board for approval. You can see it's a very, very small amount of dollars. Essentially, though, this does open up the door for our test to state program, because now we'll have a way to dispose of the nasal swabs. And so our by next now tests will now be on deck. We can use those with students and adults to keep them in school and hopefully avoid a number of quarantines moving forward.
I had a question on this, just on the details of the 1357. What if that falls on a weekend?
The Department of Public Health made those determinations. They have demonstrated that, you know, if something's supposed to test on a Sunday or a Saturday, moving to that Monday is okay. That's the question.
Do you feel that this is going to be a contract that needs to extend for many years, or just sort of right now?
I would probably extend it. This is the waste removal. So, I mean, I suppose we could take stock to see how much we're generating. But even if we're not nasal swabbing, there's any number of items generated in a school that people may not want to throw in the regular garbage.
Yeah, the reason I asked is because, again, the amount of money is not questioned. It was more, I was wondering why we didn't have it before.
Right.
And if we are going to have it, this is something that's going to be long term.
So we have it. We just don't have a contract for it. We're just anticipating an increase of generation of materials. So we can certainly go back to it as needed after we get through probably this aggressive COVID testing period for the next 6 to 10 months.
So previously it was asking. Okay.
Yep.
Can we do a motion? Okay,
So moved. Second.
roll call?
Leestra? Yes. Nelson?
Yes.
Lanier?
Yeah.
Yes. Strauss?
Yes.
Strong?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes, the motion passes. 2019-20 payroll correction. May I have a motion to approve the additional 6th class payment to teacher B04895?
So moved. Second.
Any questions?
I'm just trying to make sure I understand the background on this again. This is on.
This is the closed session.
Okay.
Essentially, it is paying the current staff member from work that was already completed.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Okay. So I just need to go around. Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Lanier?
Yes.
Strauss?
Yes.
Strong?
Yes.
Blackman? Yes. Nelson?
Yes.
Leestra? Yes. Briggs?
Yes, the motion passes. Okay, Illinois Association of School Board IASB resolutions. May I-
Finally.
Do I need a motion? May I have a motion to vote on the individual Illinois Association of School Board resolutions?
Second.
Okay, so we will go, Courtney's going to go individually through these.
We're gonna roll call, we gotta roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay, and was that Mr. Nelson and Ms. Leestra? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Nelson?
Yes.
Lanier?
What's the motion?
The motion
Is
is
to open the vote.
Oh, yes.
Sharon?
yes.
Blackman? Yes. Strauss?
Yes.
Leestra? Yes. Briggs?
Yes. Oh, the motion passes.
Correct. Now we'll go through, identify how everyone's going to vote. And we're doing them in order. So for example, number 1, pre-service teacher education and licensure and literacy. We'll do the recommendation is do adopt. And then everyone votes their conscience. And then we'll vote number 2 and all the way through. I think we need to go individually just based on some feedback that I've heard concerning a few of the individual items. So just keep it moving. Any questions?
I do, just a clarifying question. So are we saying yea or nay to the recommendation? So if you say you adopt,
Yes.
it's yea or nay to that recommendation?
Correct.
Sorry.
That's absolutely
Courtney,
right.
I can get a copy of this.
Yes.
I can write it. You're right. Those sentences. Okay. Number 1, pre-service teacher education and licensure and literacy, and the recommendation is to adopt. Lanier?
Yes.
Rouse?
Yes.
Sharon?
No.
Blackman,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Leestra. Yes. Briggs.
No. No motion passes, right? Is that how we will do it?
No, no
No,
motion.
not the motion.
She just has her.
You just passed it, so it's just yes.
Number 2, student safety and protection plan, and the recommendation is to adopt. Rouse,
Yes.
Blackman,
No.
Schron,
No.
Leestra. Yes. Lanier,
No.
Nelson,
Yes.
Briggs.
No.
Number 3, school board member compensation, and the recommendation is to not adopt. Blackman,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Leestra. Yes. Lanier,
Yes.
Schron,
Yes.
Rouse,
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Number 4, board member child care reimbursement, recommendation to adopt. Schron,
Yes.
Leestra. Yes. Nelson,
Yes.
Rouse,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Number 5, remote virtual school board open meetings. The recommendation is to adopt. Nelson,
Yes.
Blackman,
Of course, yes.
Leestra. Yes. Lanier,
Yes.
Schron,
Yes.
Rouse,
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Number 6, reorganize board from 28 to 40 days. The recommendation is to adopt. Rouse,
Yes.
Schron,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Leestra. Yes. Nelson.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Number 7, Indigenous People Curriculum Inclusion. The recommendation is to adopt. Leestra. Yes. Nelson.
Yes.
Lanier.
Yes.
Blackman.
Yes.
Rouse.
Yes.
Schron.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Number 8, Science and Reading Curriculum. The recommendation is to not adopt. Lanier.
Yes.
Rouse.
Yes.
Schron.
Yes.
Blackman.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Leestra. Yes. Briggs.
Yes.
Number 9, Health and Sex Education Curriculum. The recommendation is to adopt. Nelson.
Yes.
Lanier.
Yes.
Schron.
Yes.
Blackman.
Yes.
Rouse.
Yes.
Leestra. Yes. Briggs.
Yes.
Number 10, cannabis sales. The recommendation is to adopt. Lanier.
Yes.
Rouse.
Yes.
Schron.
No.
Blackman.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Leestra. Yes. Briggs.
Yes.
Number 11, clean energy infrastructure federal funding. The recommendation is to not adopt. Rouse.
Yes.
Blackman.
Yes.
Schron.
No.
Leestra. Yes. Lanier.
No.
Nelson.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Number 12, electric school buses, charging stations, federal funding. The recommendation is to not adopt. Blackman.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Leestra. Yes. Lanier.
No.
Schron.
No.
Rouse.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Number 13, landscaping, federal funding. The recommendation is to adopt. Schron.
Yes.
Leestra. Yes. Nelson.
Yes.
Rouse.
Yes.
Blackman.
Yes.
Lanier.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Number 14, expand broadband internet access. The recommendation is to adopt. Nelson.
Yes.
Blackman.
Yes.
Leestra. Yes. Lanier.
Yes.
Schron.
Yes.
Rouse.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Number 15, child safe gun storage. The recommendation is to not adopt. Rouse.
Yes.
Schron.
No.
Lanier.
Yes.
Blackman.
Yes.
Leestra. Yes. Nelson.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Number 16, school code review. The recommendation is do not adopt. Leestra. Yes. Nelson.
Yes.
Lanier.
Yes.
Blackman.
Yes.
Rouse.
Yes.
Schron.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Number 17, position statement 2.20, constitutional amendment on school funding. The recommendation is to adopt. Lanier.
Yes.
Rouse.
Yes.
Schron.
Yes.
Blackman.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Leestra. Yes. Briggs.
Yes.
Number 18, position statement 1.16, charter school renewal of charters. The recommendation is to adopt. Nelson.
Yes.
Lanier.
Yes.
Schron.
No.
Blackman.
Yes.
Rouse.
Yes.
Leestra. Yes. Briggs.
Yes.
Number 19, position statement 1.17, charter schools at risk students. The recommendation is to adopt. Lanier.
Yes.
Rouse.
Yes.
Schron.
No.
Blackman.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Leestra. Yes. Briggs.
Yes.
Number 20, position statement 2.25, state authorized charter school funding. The recommendation is to adopt. Rouse.
Yes.
Blackman.
Yes.
Schron.
No.
Leestra. Yes. Lanier. Nelson.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Number 21, position statement 2.04, funding special education programs. The recommendation is to adopt Blackman.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Leestra. Yes. Lanier.
Yes.
Schron.
Yes.
Rouse.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Number 22, new belief statement, prepare all students to succeed, recommendation is to adopt Schron.
Yes.
Leestra. Yes. Nelson.
Yes.
Rouse.
Yes.
Blackman.
Yes.
Lanier.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Number 23, physical and mental health of students, recommendation is to adopt Nelson.
Yes.
Blackman.
Yes.
Leestra. Yes. Lanier.
Yes.
Schron.
Yes.
Rouse.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes. That's the whole ordinance.
I think that's it.
All right, thank you, everybody. And you'll be recording those of those. All right, next item, number 8, discussion item, property tax levy 2021.
No, no.
Okay. Good evening. 15 minutes, is that what you did? As long as you want to do that. Okay.
I, for one, would like to at least now.
An hour? You know what? I can do that.
I promise her a short meeting today.
I'm
Right?
Next time, no, next time.
The point is already done an hour of it, so.
I get angry around 7.
All right, we're gonna do this a little different than we've done it in the past, just a little bit. We're gonna have 3 meetings, so you're gonna get your full dose of tax levy. Don't worry about that. So tonight we're gonna talk mostly about the levy in aggregate. We have a lot of individual things happening, so I wanna make sure we give all of them their due time. On the 22nd, I'm going to bring you back levy, which is going to be a little more traditional, what you're used to seeing, and some carry forward from this conversation. You're also then going to vote to adopt a tentative levy on the 22nd. Then the black box will go in the paper at the very beginning, like right after Thanksgiving. And you'll actually have your public hearing and adoption on the December meeting, okay? So that's kind of how it's gonna go. In the meantime, during this month period of time between now and adoption, I'm going to encourage anyone who wants to talk about this, go through the mechanics of it, aren't sure about certain pieces, want to have a better conversation about the other pieces, please feel free, email me, call me, we can set up a Zoom link, a Google Meet, if you want to come in and have one-on-one in my office, whatever you want to do, just so that you have comfort level when it comes to actually voting on this levy, okay? So, like I said, we're going to talk about this in aggregate. And by in aggregate, I mean the total amount of money that actually gets extended to all of the taxpayers of 161 in total, that big number. We are not going to talk about individual tax bills tonight, because that gets a little messy. We'll hit the mess next time around, okay? But for this time around, we're going to talk about the total bill. The total bill is made up really of a few things. It's made up of CPI, because under the Property Tax Extension Limitation Act, you are allowed to increase your capped extension, which is everything that we do with the exception of our bond and interest payments, by CPI. There's also new property. We're not even going to get into new properties today. For our purposes today, we're going to assume that there is no new property in the district, because it just keeps things clean. We're going to talk about the prior year's extension, because this year, prior year extension gets a little muddy. It's not just simply how much we billed to the taxpayers last year, because we have a little thing called the property tax relief grant. As you'll recall, 2 years ago, we agreed to take the property tax relief grant. It was a 2-year requirement to abate. Our 2 years are up. So we're going to refer to that as grant number 1, because just to keep things getting more crazy, we now have grant number 2. We'll talk about that in a second. And then we're going to talk about something that we've been talking about for a while, Senate Bill 508, that recapture of the refunds. We've been talking about refunds, especially here, for a number of years now, because we've seen them increasing year over year, and they've been significant for us. It's taken a 98% collection rate down to 92%. So that's a real number for District 161. Okay. So let's talk about CPI. CPI for this levy is 1.4% because it is last year's CPI. And so we ended the year last year at 1.4%. That's the number that you can increase. Okay? Last year's total extension for purposes of our increase was $24.3 million. That's how much money was extended onto all of the taxpayers. Okay, so your total bill for 161 was $24.3 million. Keep that number in mind. We're going to refer to it often. We're going to estimate $500 million, but like I said, in new property, but we're not going to even talk about new property today. We'll deal with that a little more next time around. The 2-year abatement of the property tax relief grant, grant number 1, expires. Okay? We now have the 2021 property tax relief grant that we are eligible to receive. So if you decide that you want to get the property tax relief grant again, we can. It would mean an additional $1.7 million added on to our state funding, the evidence-based funding formula. It will become part of our base minimum. But you then have to abate for 2 more years an additional $1.89 million. Okay? So that would be another 2-year requirement for abatement. Then there's the Senate Bill 508, that recapture piece, those refunds. Refund, my understanding is that it would be from October of last year to October, the end of October this year, that 12-month period of time. In that 12-month period of time, the numbers that I have, based on watching it every single month, is close to $750,000. Okay? Senate Bill 508 now directs the county clerk to put that money back onto the tax rolls. We have nothing to do about it. We can't abate it. It's not provided for within the law. There is trailing legislation that could allow you to abate it, but right now it doesn't exist. So my understanding is that the county clerk is going to put on that somewhere around $750,000. They need to certify a number to me, I think by next week. So we'll see how that looks. But we have absolutely no control over that. It will go onto your levy. Okay? I do have a workshop this coming Friday. Tanya Antover, who is the Cook County Clerk's office, she's the one in charge of tax extension. She's going to be there to speak, so I'll get more definite information on this piece. But based on my numbers and my read of legislation, you're looking at somewhere around $750,000. All right. So let's talk about last year's levy. Remember, we're back to that $24.3 million. And we'll remember this number, we're going to refer to it a lot. So last year, you put 2.3%, because that was last year's CPI. You put that onto the prior 2019 levy. So 2.3% got you to $25 million. You had a little bit of new property, obviously not a whole lot. Which put your whole total extension, your capital extension at $25.1 million. Then you had to abate that $1.9 million that was from grant number 1. Remember, that was the second year of our abatement. So that was your total extension at $23.2 for your capped funds. Then you have your uncapped funds, that's your bond and interest payment. So the total amount that you put onto the rolls was $24.3 million. Okay? That's how that works. So now let's talk about this year. We're gonna just talk about grant number 1 right now. Grant number 1, your requirement to abate goes away. So what does that mean? That means that you can put your 1.4 on that very top number, that first number, the number before you abated $1.9 million. So you have the ability to levy $25.4 million. Or you can put the $1.4 million on the amount after the abatement, which would get you to $23.5 million. Essentially, item number 2 would make that abatement permanent, because this is the only year you have that choice. If you choose from column B, that becomes your new base amount. If you choose to go to column A, that becomes your new base amount. Okay? So you have essentially the ability to increase $2 million. Go ahead. Now, remember, you've got these, that's the first choice you have to make. The second choice you have to make is grant number 2. Do you choose to take the next round of property tax relief money? So with that, you would get 1.7 million onto the evidence-based funding model, but then you would have to abate $1.89 million off of your levy for the next 2 years. Okay? So that gives you, we're still now between 24.7 million and 22.8 million, depending on which way you decide to go. Okay. Next, and just because this doesn't get any easier, now we've got that $750,000 that we were talking about. That's going to automatically go onto the rolls whether you want it or not. So, the difference between letting the abatement expire and taking on the full amount before the abatement for grant number 1 puts 4.7% additional funds onto the tax bill. Going with 2, making the levy, that abatement permanent, brings your tax bills down a little over 3%. I'm going to tell you that there's another option. Go ahead. And this is the option that I'm really recommending at this point. And I will give you some other models. I will model all 3 for you next time around. But right now I want you to think about item 3. That is, go with the not making it permanent. Put on the 1.4% the amount before the abatement from property tax grant relief 1. Take the abatement for 2, take that second property tax relief grant, and then abate your bond and interest fund. Abate that down to 0. The money will, then we'll take the money from your ed fund and we'll transfer it into your bond and interest fund in order to make the bond payments. Cook County Clerk will then put on that $750,000. And the net effect of this will be $24.3 million. You'll have a 0 increase on your total levy. And it's a non-permanent decision. So you are not required to abate that bond and interest fund again the next year. It gives you the ability to make some decisions moving forward as to how much money you actually need to operate the district, while taking advantage of the property tax relief fund grant and not increasing the property taxes on the district in total. It would require you to do 2 abatements, 1 for the new property tax relief grant and 1 to abate the bond and interest fund for 1 year.
For option 3, is the CPI still 1 point?
It's still 1.4. That's where you start. That's where you start. But the impact on all of these little things that are happening will give you a net effect of 0.
So, thank you for Dave's early presentation. I know Dave's more like, but your next slide really is you haven't done the forecast 5 months yet, you're gonna go through this next time.
Yep.
Which really we need
Yep.
to have an informed discussion.
Yes.
I just have, can you also take a look at, so here's my question, hopefully. There is a risk of inflation on that, correct? Right?
Absolutely.
Now, because we adjust every year by CPI,
Yep.
that may be self-adjusted. My question for you is, if we take option 3,
Yep.
which is a 0% increase,
Yep.
and inflation really does get away from us over the next year, can you take a look at how that will impact things that we actually spend money on, right?
Absolutely.
So teacher salaries are not going to change in a year, but are there things, significant things in the budget
Yep.
that might hurt us on?
Yes.
Should we take that away?
Yes. So
You don't have to answer today.
no. My intention is when I'm building, so what I'm doing right now is building a base model and then building the model with other options on it. The expense side, I'm absolutely taking into account what salaries and benefits, I can use, like we said, we're collective bargaining agreement, so those are gonna be pretty simple to forecast out. The others, I was exactly what I was gonna do, is put CPI for every year on whatever we forecast CPI on the levy. And do that going out. That way that should keep it within a reasonableness moving out those 5 years. And then once those multiple models are built, we'll have the ability to lay one on top of the other so that you can see its impact on fund balances over the next 5 years. And that's what I will be bringing to you on the 22nd. We're still in the middle of building it, and I've got forecast 5 to give with that as well.
Thank you.
Okay, but Cam, you said something that I guess I want to also hear flushed out. You said 0% increase. And it sounds to me as if there still is an increase. Although I think what I'm hearing, and I'm saying it out loud from Fran, I really hear your explanation on this. But then it sounds like that after the increase, then there's a minus 0.9% aggregate, which means that
That's what I meant, that's definitely with 0.
okay, so yeah, so
If we choose
that's
option 3, that's 0% increase.
okay,
Yeah, my only question is, are we taking on inflation risks?
right, right. So, like I said, that's why I want to make sure that was clarified in my head. So, Fran, I noticed you said that there will be a CPI increase of 1.4, but then, and can you go to slide 1, please? Slide 2. Keep on, and so that's, but then it says up there that last year was 2.3. So was it 1.4 and then 1.4 or 1.4?
So 2.3 was last year's levy, it was 2020. Yeah.
Right, when your presentation said the same.
2021 is what we're looking at right now, and that's on a 1.4.
Okay, so we'll go down.
So yeah, go one more.
Okay. And then on that slide, you were saying that we would make it permanent, okay, as opposed to letting it expire.
No,
So yeah, please
we'd
clarify that.
expire it. We would expire it.
Okay,
So we would put the 1.4, let the abatement expire.
okay,
And how you're actually getting back to that 0 is by abating bond and interest. So essentially, you're taking an abatement in replacement of the first grant abatement. And we'll do it on bond and interest.
yeah, okay. And then go to slide 5, I think it is. So on this slide, again, so looking at, again, that's that 1.4% increase.
Correct.
And that's why I was trying to make sure I understood the difference between the abatement expiring versus being permanent.
So the abatement, the original abatement will expire. This is the second abatement. So grant 1 and grant 2. Each grant is for 2 years, right? The first one, we let expire here. Then we take the second one here. But then how you get the impact of the first abatement is the next slide. Where you, go more. Where you then abate your bond and interest, and that essentially replaces the abatement from the first grant.
Okay, so one last question. So up, back, yeah, right, and stop right there. So on this one, you're saying that if you let the abatement expire, then we're gonna have an increase of 4.7%, but on the other one, you're saying there'll be a decrease of 3.34%.
Correct.
And now, would the taxpayer see that decrease or that increase, or how does that work?
If you were to go with this option, yes, you would see that increase come on, that decrease. And actually, it comes to be it's not that great of a decrease after you really take a look at that $750,000. No, that's not true. I'm sorry, I lied. It was 24.3. So no, you will see a decrease here, and it'll be real and it'll be permanent. And that's kind of what I like about the other option of abating bond and interest, because it doesn't become permanent for you until you decide to not abate your bond and interest fund. It gives you the ability to raise that back to an area that you may need going in the future. If you make the abatement permanent, you no longer can get to that 25 million ever.
And we need that flexibility.
You may.
Or it would be wise to have that flexibility.
Yes, especially if we start looking at inflation issues, if we start looking, so the one thing about this property tax relief grant is it puts more money into the base funding minimum for your state funding. What is the one thing that I know for sure about the state of Illinois? They're not very good about paying their bills. And we have been in a world where we were getting prorated before. When you are now putting a bigger chunk of your revenues into a stream that may or may not be able to make that full payment and don't have an ability to get that money back in the property tax levy, you may be talking about some serious cuts.
So, look to the next slide. So, what you're really wanting us to discuss and consider is this option.
Correct.
Which would still go ahead and have a net of 0.9, negative.
Correct.
Or zero, that's what you're saying.
Correct. With flexibility to go back the other way if you have to.
Okay. Got it.
Does that make sense?
Fran, I have a question for you. In 2019, I just distinctly remember you saying, in 2 years, I'll be looking for, like, to help you decide what to do after the 2 years. What was that? Do you remember?
And what that is do you make it permanent?
Okay.
Or do you let it expire?
Okay.
That's exactly where we're at right now.
Okay.
This is that point that I kind of warned you about. You're going to have a decision to make.
Okay.
Kind of made it a little easier when you end up with another property tax relief grant. So, we have the ability to let it expire without having a big impact on the taxing base.
Okay. That helps. Other questions?
So yeah, like I said, what I'm going to be doing is running those models. Call me, email me, whatever you want to discuss all the nitty-gritty. We will get it. Approve the tentative on the 22nd, public hearing and adoption on the 13th. Okay. If you have any other things you want to see, let me know. Next time around, there'll be a lot less words and a whole lot more pictures, so we can have an idea of where this goes. But I know this one is nuts. So I mean, it's had my brain scrambled. So yeah. Right. And just so you know, too, I've been picking all kinds of other people's brains. Rob and I have spent a long time on the phone with this. And I've gotten some input from PMA, I've gotten a lot of input from Forecast 5. So we're definitely using our experts just to make sure that we're all on the same page.
So the basis of your recommendation for the third option is that as much as possible, we retain the total funding as much as possible with the minimum impact on the taxpayer.
Correct.
Is that fair? Okay.
That's fair. Yep.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. May I have a motion to go to closed session?
Second.
All in favor?
Thanks for coming, everybody. We aren't going to take any action after the closed session. See you all tomorrow. Thank you.